All right. Hi, everyone. This is our feedback for our second group assignment. I'm Megan Keller.
Christian Chicas from subgroup 1.
I'm Miranda. I'm from subgroup 2.
I'm Kendall. I'm also from subgroup 2.
All right, so going to share our screen. We're going to take a look at our feedback, and then if you guys have any questions, we will do our best to answer them. And if you hear my cat in the background, I do apologize. All right, can everyone see my shared screen? All right, awesome. Okay, so Christian and I will just kind of go through this. We'll have a discussion and we will do the best job we can. All right, so obviously for our lit review, you guys did a really great job in the introduction, explaining the antecedent interventions, identifying the advantages and disadvantages of the activity schedule. So that was really awesome. Overall, that section, our group thought looked really great. Just some quick feedback. Some of the limitations could possibly be moved up into the intro just as disadvantages of the intervention, just to make it a little bit more cohesive. And as we go through this, guys, too, we can even jump down to our actual embedded feedback after our one-page summary so that we can just take a look and break it down a little bit farther. Christian, if you want to jump in, and this doesn't have to be just my voice.
Yeah, looking at the limitations section, we thought that the limitations should just address the comparisons between the studies and the populations outlined in our community section. I think this was a point of feedback that we'll see a couple times throughout this through different sections. This was a big point of feedback, is like looking at the population that you guys copied over from ours. So looking at the Portland, Oregon city in the Multnomah County, and seeing how that population relates to the literature and to any limitations that may be there. An example they put is the differences between experimenters in the study and our hypothetical direct care staff. So what differences would there be implementing an activity schedule in a study setting versus in a school setting like we are?
And just thinking about the direct care staff and their education, I think.
Yeah,
too.
no, I mean, I'm glad that you guys had mentioned that, because we were talking so much about the limitations within the literature, but applying that back to our direct care, there are a lot of limitations, because our direct care staff, they're not trained, they're not teachers,
in the 8th grade levels that they present with.
They're all teachers who have experience with activity schedules previously. So for sure, a limitation. Thank you all for mentioning that.
No problem. All right, I will jump down to our limitations. And again, Christian, if you want to jump in, if you guys have any questions as we go, just feel free. So just as it relates to the delimitations, just really focusing on the specific threats to the external validity and just ensuring that we're considering all forms of diversity. And again, touching upon, our direct care staff, as well as the diversity that might present in the literature. We just want to make sure we focus on that. Slides 17 and 18 of the lit review will provide some clarity, I think, as it relates to this section. Just really focusing on the comparing and contrasting of the general information from the articles, as well as to the clients and the professionals or the paraprofessionals in our hypothetical agency. And again, page 18 will provide some of those examples for you guys to just reference, just as it relates to diversity. And again, like we touched upon in the limitations, just the participants in the studies versus our staff. And just thinking about predominantly contrasting, I mean, but still trying to draw some comparisons. Obviously thinking about the articles, the students with ASD in the school settings, it's a great similarity. And then just thinking about any other diversity factors, which we might be able to make that comparison.
Another
Just-
thing that we noticed when we were looking over it together as a subgroup is that sometimes in different sections, it seems like it's unclear who the audience is for this paper. Just making sure that we know, I think in this assignment we're providing a training package for a BCBA to implement with direct care staff, and approaching it like that as opposed to approaching it as a study. So I know there's a lot of talk about the study, if we scroll down to the
Yeah,
embedded
I'm gonna jump
feedback.
down. Hold on, guys.
Thank you, Megan.
No problem, sorry. All right. It's going to be
Looking at the limitations, delimitations. It says some limitations you may experience within the study include, and we were wondering is it really a study or
No,
is it?
no, you're right. And it should say, the intervention that we are, that
So
will
just
be
making sure
implemented,
that
not saying study.
everyone has the same audience, just making it more cohesive across sections and making sure everyone is on the same page with that was another point of feedback we had.
That's a
Correct me if
good
I'm
point.
wrong, but,
Because we did spend a decent amount of time discussing that as a subgroup.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure to relay that for you guys so we can make it as cohesive as possible.
Any questions that you guys have about that section? Okay, I will jump back up, and then if we have any other questions, I mean, the general edits that we made are pretty straightforward, I think, in the actual body.
Well, and I was gonna ask a question about that. So the edits in the body, how are we able to print this document out to show all of those comments?
So
then-
whenever we download it into a Word document, they will transfer.
Okay,
So it's perfect. We tested that in our subgroup meeting and it works really nicely.
okay.
So we tested that together so that we
Okay.
could just make sure that they would transfer, but they do.
Awesome. Kendall, I saw where you said you don't think your mic is working. When you did introduce yourself, you're just really quiet.
Yeah, very low volume. We could hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Can you
We
hear
can
me
hear you
now?
now.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think there was also an issue where my phone was connecting as my microphone for whatever reason too. I wanted to ask a question about the last section really quickly.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Does this all have to be in layman's terms? Maybe I'm confusing the last assignment that we had.
I
But
think
since a training,
I don't think it had to be in layman's terms.
I
Okay.
don't remember that either. Do you, Christian?
I don't, but I think that's a great thing. that we
Point.
Yes, we'll look at that. I know, for
Well, the
example, for
best
my
of-
other course, I had to do a training last week that it was layman's terms. So I know it's easy with so many assignments right now to get them all jumbled together, but we can look back for sure at it and make sure.
Yeah,
maybe I
so
just
you
looked at
know
the wrong
professor
assignment.
with clarity too, because honestly, I know that the assignment's usually written by someone other than the professor. So
Right.
reaching out to her for
Yeah,
her
for sure.
expectations is always, I think, the best bet.
But I mean, I think that's a great question, especially when we do consider the direct care staff.
Mhm.
I mean, just whenever we're presenting anything to anyone, considering their diversity and their education.
Right. And I saw somewhere where it said to remember that we are likely not the ones doing this training, that
Mhm.
it'll be presented to a BCBA doing whatever. So essentially, we're not actually creating the training.
Right.
This seems to me more like a sales pitch to the BCBA. Like, look, here's all the stuff. This is the best intervention ever. Now take
Right,
it.
why we should use visual schedules.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, just thinking about, because the VCBA that I work with does have to present a lot of PDs to paraprofessionals. So a similar population. And like she shared different like PowerPoints that they've created. And, they are, again, like Kendall, you said, more in layman's terms. And the way they break it down and go through it's just really helpful, I think. So I think that's a
Well,
good.
and that might even be something that we mention in here, since we are, this is going to get, our audience is a BCBA, that they need to know that, a limitation of the study is that you are now training people that have no experience, that
Right.
that may not have done this at all. So you need to make sure that you're using, layman's terms in
Right.
the training. Whereas in our articles that we read, they weren't having to do that.
Right.
So.
And really try to limit the jargon, because that's always confusing. It's
Mhm.
always confusing. All right, I think those were great discussion points. We'll just keep this moving, guys. As it
Validity.
relates to social validity, really great job including the examples of ways social validity was tested. Just try to really discuss the results of the measures, the outcomes, the appropriateness, the acceptability needs to be included. And then answering the question, did individuals find activity schedules socially valid? And then just reference slide 19. And is it likely that autistic children and stakeholders in our classroom will find it socially valid? And I think just talking more to that again, kind of selling it, like Christian mentioned above, just kind of why visual schedules will work really well with this population.
Yeah. And for internal validity, we thought it was a pretty good section. They would just suggest providing an example of more threats to internal validity and different ways that the internal validity can be threatened, like through an example was like maturation, like over time, like how does this intervention how might that a factor affect internal validity, or different internal validity threats, external validity. In this section, we thought it was a really good definition of external validity, but in general, we wanted to see more focus on the participants that were in our section, like in the population. So looking at the research that we have, what populations it was done with, and like I know in our Portland group, we have in Portland there's a more sizable like Asian Pacific Islander community,
Right.
like how
Latino
community, like how is this generalizable to those people as opposed to generalizable across like different settings within the same person. So how are the findings? Are there any threats how this might be implemented in a different population?
Well, and I will say we talked about that, and so should we include not just our classroom that this intervention is going to be happening?
implemented.
I guess that's what I'm saying is like, because we don't have all the populations can't be represented just in our little classroom. So should we speak on this being used with other classrooms, other settings? I guess if that makes sense. We just thought like, well, we should only focus on our kids, but like, should we do more?
Yeah, I agree. I think all 5 of our articles only spoke to the population ages from 3 years old to about 8 years old. So really, we could only speak on what each of our articles in comparison to
Yeah, and I
the
think
whole study.
that is a threat to external validity. So you could say that how generalizable is it to older populations?
Mhm.
How generalizable is it to um populations, like if a study is all like 3 to 8 year old autistic boys, how generalizable is it to the girls? How
Right, the
generalizable is
females.
it? Yeah, like things
We
like
just
that.
we just weren't sure if we should do that since we just didn't know if the instructor would say, okay, that's great for those different populations, but we need to focus on your focus on
Right.
your, so, but no, we can for
Yeah.
sure do that.
I think you could tie it back into the demographics of Portland, because even if we do have a classroom right now that is a certain mix, like looking at the demographics of the Portland County that we're in, like every year as a students rotate, like that is like our base of what the population we're serving is.
Right.
So that serve as like
Yeah,
you-
no, you're right.
Baseline.
Then the next year, it might be great this year, but then next year when you have a whole new group of kiddos and a whole new,
Dynamic.
yeah,
Right.
that's a good way to tie it.
Absolutely. I mean, because every year classrooms change so much. I mean, one year we might only have males, the next year we might have more females. So. But again, overall, you guys did a nice job. All right, let's jump into our conclusions as well as just general feedback. It's well worded, summarizing the benefits of using the visual schedules. Probably we definitely felt overall as a group whenever we met that we want to have like a final paragraph that will discuss like why we would still use the schedules with our hypothetical clients in our hypothetical agency, and just really trying to link that back to like our specific group of children. Thinking especially as it relates to the factors relating to diversity and inclusion. Again, slide 30 of the assignment does suggest concluding with some tips for helping our DCS and really considering our paraprofessionals and their experiences and what they might really need to help them. Because I mean, they probably will need a good deal to help them. And also maybe consider adding a table with examples of when would be appropriate times to use the visual schedules and maybe when we would want to not use them. But again, just really linking it back to like our babies in the Portland classroom.
Right. I wanted to touch on a little one sentence I saw up in the document. It said something about combining limitations with internal validity and the delimitations and external validity. And we talked about that and we were looking through, and I guess that was a point of confusion that we have of, are these not the same thing? Like, are we like, so I guess we were trying to figure out based on the slideshow, we look back at the slideshow and it said like 1 to 2 pages on the general effectiveness of the intervention. And then the other part of the assignment was using the social validity, internal validity, external validity, limitations, delimitations. And it was like, wait a minute, are these not the, so is internal validity and limitations, are they the same, or is that the same thing? Or no? Am I totally off base?
Christian, I think you described this really well whenever we collectively met as a group. Do you
I know,
remember
and I
what
have
you
a
said back
post-it
then?
note. I have a post-it note
know.
when he was talking,
He
and it
did.
literally has I have an arrow down from limitations that says internal validity, and I have an arrow down from delimitations that says external validity. So when we were going through this assignment, I was like, are we saying the same? Are we like,
Is it
this-
redundant?
Yes.
Right.
So so I guess I was gonna add or address what you guys said in your feedback was, should these not be combined?
Separate,
Yeah, because you said, or if you scroll back up,
yeah,
it was right below.
it was gonna be up.
Here we go.
here.
Do you think it would make more sense to combine the delimitations and external validity sections and also combine the limitation section with the internal validity? Just a thought. And that was, yes, that's what I'm thinking as well,
Right.
but I wanted to make sure that was correct. Christian, did you
Yeah.
want to?
Do you want to jump in here? I mean, you are muted, Christian.
I'm so sorry. I think
Have
we
you
were
been
going so
talking?
hard. Yeah, those were just the same thing and just different ways of describing it.
Yeah, so we can totally
Combine.
put those together and make it cohesive and eliminate.
And I think one final point we had that it was not mentioned in the summary that we kind of discussed in our meeting was just the APA formatting that she wants. That I think it was something about like it being like double spaced or something
Right,
like
the
that. Like
single spaced.
the way she wants it formatted, just making sure that we're able to do those edits, and we can add that into the feedback before we send it over to make sure that we're meeting all the points. Although when we tested it out, like we tried to do the single space with like I think double spaces between the paragraphs or something like that.
Right, double space between paragraphs, single space within the body of the paragraph.
Yes.
So
So
I
we're
think
not
that's
at
how
3
she
pages.
wanted it, and it still fit the page requirements. So it was
Okay.
fine. It was just
Well, at
like,
first I was
right.
panicking when I opened that document and saw that we were at like 20 something pages, I about fell out. But then once I realized that we did not have to count what we brought
Right.
over, then I stopped panicking.
Right, and then just again to piggyback, just adding a header with the group name and page numbers would be helpful. But again, overall, we think you guys did a really great job. It's a great start. And
We
I think
definitely
it's
ran over
helpful
15 minutes. We gave a laugh. I think
to, yeah, I think it's helpful to have these feedback meetings to kind of just hash things out and discuss like different
Yeah.
points of view, honestly.
Yeah. And to talk to humans that aren't 5-year-olds that I work with every day.
For sure.
yeah, if you guys have any more questions about anything,
Yes.
obviously you can reach out to the professor or reach out to Angie
Yes,
and we'll
for sure.
set
I need to look in. I know that Monday's a holiday, so likely office hours aren't available. I need to hit the rubric syllabus, something, and see when we could meet with the instructor, if possible, to meet on Tuesday, just to go over any of these, any questions that we have before
Yeah.
it has to be submitted Tuesday evening.
Right.
And we're gonna,
And you know what? If she has any major points, she'll give you guys 5 days to revise.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
we'll have
right.
feedback too. That's what I said. For a minute I was getting a bit overwhelmed with the assignment and the due dates, and it just seems like everything's all hitting at once, but the feedback time will allow us to make
Right.
those changes.
Which is
Yeah.
helpful, actually, guys.
Yes.
It
And
is.
remember that the next training assignment is also your subgroup. So we should
Yes.
Yeah.
start to discuss a time to meet
Yes.
and
To
go
get
over
the
that.
ball
But I want you guys
rolling.
to be overwhelmed doing that and then also doing
Yes.
her
Yeah.
revisions at the same
Right.
time.
Right. No, I know. It's like we were talking about it when we were, it was like, oh gosh, it's dead, but we, woosawed, we talked through it, used positive talk, refrain from negative, and push on. 'Cause we're just
Using
together.
positive self-talks always
So
helpful.
close. But no, thank you guys so much for your feedback. We really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Always,
And
thank you.
then, like Christian said, we'll add that in and then we can just share everything with your group, with your
Yeah,
subgroup.
and awesome. I will have Madison get with
Angie,
about getting us a meeting scheduled for next week.
sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Have a
Bye.
great Saturday.
You
Bye.
too.
Thanks.